Historical fiction has some giants that everybody talks about. Shogun, Pillars of the Earth, The Nightingale. But today I want to shine a light on the hidden treasures you might have missed. Welcome to the channel today, I'm Will, and as I said, I'm talking about some historical fiction gems. I've limited it to just historical fiction, no non-fiction today. Maybe that could be a separate video. But these are ones that I think, they're 5 actually, that I think should have a lot more popularity, a much wider readership. Some are already a bit popular, but I think should be far more mainstream. And some are a bit more obscure that I really just want more people to pick up. So hopefully today you can get one recommendation that you would like to read. That is the biggest honour as kind of a booktuber or talking about books, is someone picking up a book you've recommended and loving it. So hopefully I can achieve that today and intrigue you in at least one of these 5 works. They span quite a few historical periods and also motivations and main priorities as well. But as I said, the main thing is that they are historical fiction gems, so I think that they are hidden and they need to be exposed a bit more, so hopefully I can do a small tiny part to help with that. So let's start with Wolffall and The Last Kingdom. I just think these aren't talked about enough. Of course I'm joking, these are discussed a lot. I'm not saying they're not warranted of that, because I loved Wolffall, need to carry on with the series, and I love The Last Kingdom. I've read 12 of the 13 installments, but these are kind of the 2 of the biggest historical fiction series out there, so this is the type of thing that I'm not going to be talking about, and this is just a little joke. But now let's get into the real 5. First up is Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lennon, my favourite read of 2024. Instead of following kings or generals, it follows 2 potters in Syracuse staging a play on Euripides. Not your usual description of a book, but it is funny, it is tragic, and most importantly, it is utterly human. As these 2 people kind of explore kind of the failures of their past, and they feel this is their last chance to redeem themselves, they try and stage a play with Athenian prisoners who are prisoners in Syracuse. And so you have this real power dynamic as they give food and drink to the prisoners if they take part in this play. And it is, as I said, that really distorted power dynamic of they obviously far higher up and these prisoners are relying on them. But then also relationships begin to form and they start to see these people not as prisoners but as real human beings. And then of course that's going to anger a lot of the people in Syracuse because their family members have died at war with Athens and more has happened in that conflict. And so there's quite a few different components to how this kind of event and decision leads to a ripple effect with people they know, the actual prisoners, and how they change themselves. It's because they feel like they failed their potters. They wanted to be far more, and this is kind of an attempt at kind of a bit of grandeur and returning to their dreams of youth. And so it's that reflection of kind of, you've lost your naivety, but you still feel like you can achieve something. This is where, whilst it is historical fiction and centered in that very specific historical moment of Syracuse and Athens, it feels like it could be applied to any historical period really, because the main focus is the humanity and specifically kind of the things that make us human now that were also so integral and have always been key to humanity, about kind of identity, about drive, and about relationships with one another. These 2 friends, they are best friends, but they come into conflict with each other sometimes. And when you're best friends, you can be very honest with each other, and that can cause kind of friction as well. Glorious Exploits is just absolutely beautiful. As I said, it is funny, it's really hilarious at times, you laugh out loud, but it is also, on the flip side of that, utterly tragic. I mean, it breaks my heart, but yet I still carried on reading, and there are some of the best scenes I've ever read here, just philosophical, but not to a pretentious level. Again, with the prose, it's not ornamental, it is just perfect to the psychology of our characters, and there are moments of flair that just really just strike you so hard as the reader. Glorious Exploits is quite a short read, and it's one that I'm recommending to people no matter what genre they usually read. Then I've got Arthur by Giles Christian. If Bernard Cornwell's Warlord Chronicles had a younger, moodier brother, then this would be it. It is historical fiction with myth in its bones. Similarly to the Warlord Chronicles, this is looking at if Arthur really did exist and the Arthurian legend, and looking at it in the dark ages of Britain. And so I know it's called the early medieval period now, but if you're going to call anywhere the Dark Ages, it probably is Britain, because we basically have no surviving written texts or really much information at all about this period after the Romans left. So this is a standalone. It is tied to 2 previous standalones in the Arthurian Tales by Giles Christian, but it is a self-contained story. 2 POVs. You've got one of young Arthur as a boy, which is something I've never seen before. I haven't read T.H. White's Sword in the Storm. Stone... What is it called? the once and future king. I was thinking of David Gemmell's Sword in the Storm then. Anyway, I haven't read that, so maybe there's more of Arthur as a child in there. But of the Arthurian fiction that I've read, I haven't seen Arthur explored, at least in a darker book, as a child. And then we've got another POV called Beren, and he is an old, grizzled veteran who is basically kind of lost the colour of life. He is cynical, and he is part of, as I said, a mercenary group. But one day, he's sent out for a mission with some others, and they're told to attack a party. But then he sees a boy who he knows, and he can't bring himself to kill him, and he actually turns on his mercenary band, and he has to flee with the boy, who could be the final chance to save Britain. And so you've got these two POVs, and they work together so well. A lot of this is kind of the twists and turns, so I won't really go into much more about the plot because it would kind of ruin the experience, I think. Part of it is to go in blind. But Giles Christian is one of the most beautiful writers out there. Perfect for Arthurian legend, because with that, it's deeply historical and stripped back of a lot of kind of the kind of sentimentality in many ways, but also it is so nostalgic, and that sentimentality is kind of buried deeper within, but you still see it from time to time. It is lyrical, beautiful prose that is just excellent at exploring character. It's a character-driven story. I'm a character-driven reader, but there's plenty of fantastic action sequences. Giles Christian, I think, is one of the few historical fiction authors who can really immerse you in the historical period, but doesn't do so to the detriment of the story, because he does his research properly. You can tell he knows about this period, and he kind of looks into the psychology and the kind of stoicism and how people would think of that time, but then also doesn't take it too far away from what we know now to make it a bit jarring. It is an absolutely fantastic balance, and I love how you can just see he loves the Arthurian legend, and he's cherry-picked the bits that he thinks work in this story, and he's not forcing stuff just because he thinks the reader might want to see it. But Arthur, incredible. It's my favourite of Giles Christian's works, my favourite of his Arthurian standalones and beyond. It is an incredible story, and one that I think needs a lot more eyes on it. The third one I've got is The Wolf Den by Elodie Harper. This is a stunning trilogy set in Pompeii in the 1st century, and it is about women forced into slavery. It's harrowing, but also shines a light on the resilience of the human spirit, the power of friendship, and again, humanity. This is something that I find so fascinating with historical fiction, is that we can go back 500 years, 1,000 years, in this case, just under 2,000 years. And whilst the culture is so different and the setting is so different as well, it can still feel so relatable because of the things that are human throughout generations and throughout millennia, the things that have tied kind of humanity together. And it's why we kind of reflect on literature of the past and connect with it, and that is explored more in books like The Wolf Den. It's one POV. We follow Amara, and we see that she's in an awful position as a slave with basically no agency, but the way she uses her tiny bit of agency is just incredible. She is bound by the bonds of friendship. So amongst this despair and how dark parts of this story are, because you've got the hope of this kind of sisterhood, this friendship, and what they would do for each other, that kind of light, and it's not light in terms of light tone, but in terms of kind of hope and also kind of a more positive lens. And the way that these people cope, it is moving, and it is, as I said, deeply, deeply human. Amara is a fantastic, magnetic POV, who there's always this underlying tension because of her position as a slave, that amongst the things she's trying to do to basically escape or allow her friends to have a better life, if anything is found out, then you know that everything will go wrong. And so there's this underlying tension that she could be unveiled at any time. And it's a bit similar in that respect to kind of books like, Red Rising or The Will of the Many, where these characters are in a position of subterfuge and they have kind of a hidden identity. And so whilst there's not a hidden identity in this, it's the same in that if their secret is unveiled, you know that basically it's over. Everyone they know will not trust them anymore, and they'll be put in a very deep, dark place. The Wolf Den is historical fiction. It's fantastically written, again, quite poetic. Elodie Harper is one of the best writers out there. I just finished Boudicca's Daughter, which I did prefer The Wolf Den, but I still thought Boudicca's Daughter was great. So that's 4 books now in a row that I've absolutely loved by her. And it seems a bit similar to Pat Barker in her exploration of kind of characters in this position of slavery and in such a just awful position. And Pat Barker wrote Silence of the Gales, and that's the book I'm thinking of there. But The Wolf Den as a trilogy is exceptional, and as a book one it is absolutely fantastic. It is so tense, it has a great cast of characters, and Amara, as I said, is a magnetic POV to look at this story from. The fourth one is Dan Jones's Essex Dogs. This is where the brilliant non-fiction author turns his eye to fiction. He gives us a band of warriors and throws us into the 100 Years' War. But this isn't kind of your typical military historical fiction where you're seeing kind of the leaders organise battles and the great action conflicts and seeing the huge grandiose consequences. No, we are in the itty gritty. We follow a band of mercenaries who are just kind of trudging from one place to another. We see kind of the difficulties of organising a march, losing supplies, occupying villages slowly but surely, and moving towards a bigger conflict that everyone is terrified of, basically. And there's a lot of kind of the depths of depravity of humanity in here, but again, that darkness is counteracted by a certain light in the hope of our main characters, which makes the darkness, whilst exploring kind of the historical period and the realities, still makes it bearable. As it says on the back, some men fight for glory, some others fight for coin, the Essex Dogs fight for each other. So whilst you have the depravity of others, the Essex Dogs are looking out for each other. You've got quite a range of characters. I really like how Dan Jones plays with the multi-POV aspect here, where you've got scenes where there's kind of an action scene and you're following characters across a lot of different places. And even if it's a small action scene, you can see how one person's actions are going to have an impact on others. And that is just played with really, really well. It's like pieces in a puzzle, and it makes it feel interactive as the reader, as you're really thinking of the consequences of what someone does. And it is great. It's got really specifically good dialogue, I find, which I find a bit jarring in historical fiction. If people sound too similar to how we speak now, I think that just feels a bit wrong and not immersive and takes me out of the place. But then if it's too kind of antiquated, then again, that can take me out as well, as I'm trying to actually understand what is being said. And I think Dan Jones, again, strikes a really great balance. I know I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry, but I picked 5 books that I absolutely love. And there are quite a few things that crop up time and time again in my favourite books. One is being character driven, and one is kind of the interactiveness as a reader. I'm really getting you to engage with the themes and the characters and the consequences. So that's why I mentioned it quite a few times. Apologies for that. But Essex Dogs is a great book 1. I love The Wolves of Winter book 2 as well. And Lionhearts was only released a few weeks ago, and I definitely need to pick it up. But Dan Jones, I love his non-fiction and I love his historical fiction as well. I hope in future we get to see more on this side of literature from him. And then in the 5th spot, I have got Conor Ilgudden's Gates of Athens. This is proof that history's greatest dramas don't need dragons to be epic. Conor Ilgudden is one of the biggest historical fiction authors out there, but I don't really see Gates of Athens talked about. It's kind of been submerged beneath his other works, like his Conquest series or his series with Caesar, or his medieval series in the War of the Roses as well. Whereas I think the Gates of Athens, out of the 8 or 9 books I've read by him, is by far the best and one of the greatest books I have ever read. Conor Ilgudden makes kind of Greek history feel like a blockbuster here, whilst a lot of it is court intrigue. It is politics, battles, and larger-than-life characters thrown into this story. Somehow he has the Battle of Marathon and Thermopylae in the same book. When I heard that, I kind of grimaced a bit, and I think he's setting out to do a little bit much here, especially as I love Gates of Fire so much, which tackles Thermopylae. But Conor Ilgudden sticks more with the political side, and he's got incredible action sequences, but they're amazing because of the build-up and the investment you have, and you have a total understanding of the consequences if one outcome arises or the other or the third option. You really understand the implications, and that is why you feel so invested. It's like I say of fantasy, you can have the best, most epic battle ever, but if I'm not invested in the characters or the consequences of the battle, I don't really care, and I'm not invested. And that's that was my problem with Deadhouse Gates in the Malazan series, whereas I was investing in Gardens of the Moon, and that's why I enjoyed that a lot more. Gates of Athens has put just brilliant political intrigue in the democratic Athens. We've got a few key figures, 3 perspectives that we follow, who are kind of political figures that can have an influence in this democratic kind of setting that they have, and making big key decisions for the wars to come. So we follow 3 characters very, very different in terms of charisma, priority, and kind of morality as well. And they are just excellent to follow. They complement each other so well. Some are the foils to others, but there's somehow got like a triangular foil instead of just one against the other. And so the characters are outstanding. The political intrigue is excellent, but also the action sequences, as I said, are fantastic because of that investment. Con Eggledon writes something which somehow he fits so much in there without it feeling jarring or jammed. And I nearly got through without crying. But the final page, he did something very, very sneaky. And yes, I did cry at the Gates of Athens. If you've read the final page, I'm sure you know what made me cry. But yeah, that is the final pick for today's video. Some incredible ancient Greek historical fiction looking at Marathon, Thermopylae and more. And I do also love the sequel. It's a duology which we need to see more of because I love a 10-book series, but sometimes 2 books is even better. So there we go, they are 5 hidden historical gems that I really think more people need to read. I love historical fiction as a genre. I think it's got so much more to give and I cannot wait to read more. Obviously, I haven't read books like Shogun, Lonesome Dove, things like this that are the titans of the genre for a reason that I really, really want to pick up. But hopefully I can find some more gems over the next year. And hopefully you can help me find some of them. So let me know in the comments below, are there some historical fiction gems you think I should read and will you be picking any of these up? Please do let me know in the comments below. But everyone, thank you so much for watching. Carpe diem.